everybody. I'm here at the beautiful Champions Run golf course in my hometown, Eagle, Tennessee. Joining me is Sam. Hey Sam, how's it going?
Going well.
What was it like growing up in a household with no strong Christian belief system?
It was difficult, and the reason being is just because I always had a grasp on God, and I always knew that there was a God. It's just growing up without that firm foundation, I didn't know what it looked like to actually follow Jesus and follow the footsteps he left behind for us to follow. And with that came confusion, just because without that strong foundation, I just made God whoever I wanted him to be. And at the end of the day, found an excuse to cope with that reasoning of, this is why I do what I do. And without parents placing that foundation and those boundaries and stuff, it was very difficult to have that actual real relationship with Jesus Christ. So.
Yeah, I imagine that was pretty hard for you to do, especially as a kid. Do you feel that you faced more struggles?
No, I think that the devil, no matter where you come from, is always going to take away the gifts that God has for you. Whether it's a strong, firm, foundational Christian home or not, there's always gifts received from the Lord. The biggest one being the free gift that Jesus laid his life down for us on that cross. And the devil is always going to try to tempt us to look away from that. So,
did you ever feel yourself grasping for something but you weren't sure what it was, or you couldn't find what that was?
Yeah, all the time. It's I grew up with divorced parents, and it was hard for me to view what real love looked like because of divorced parents and the hardships that comes with. And court for me and my family lasted a little over a decade. So it was definitely some tough times going through that. And again, I always knew that there was God, and I always wanted the love from God. I just was never really in a great position to receive it. Yeah, so the biggest thing was basketball for sure. Growing up with the problems I had in my family, basketball was the one thing I could always go to get that off my mind. And unfortunately, because I had divorced parents, I felt like I had to be an adult at a younger age, and what came with that. In order to do that and to cope with those feelings and fill that void temporarily was to also, explore and do things like drugs and lustful things, and also on top of that, basketball. So it's just really anything but God to fill that void. Yeah, so I loved basketball. Fortunately, was pretty good at it. I worked very hard to be good at basketball. It was something I was passionate about, and I was a pretty troubled kid, so I always wanted like a getaway. So basketball was always the thing I could get away to kind of just not think about the problems I was going through.
Do you feel like that was all life had to offer?
No, I knew that there was more to life, and that's touched on it a little bit. That's why I started to kind of dip into other things, like experiencing drugs and unfortunately like sexual intentions and stuff like that, just really trying to explore what all life had to give and offer. And unfortunately, it was really just everything but God, because I was so angered at God for the things that I went through in my life. So
seems tough. Seems tough. So do you feel that God found you, or you found God?
God definitely found me, for sure. I had a pretty hardened heart for the things I had gone through in life, and it's crazy now because I reflect on those situations and everything that I went through, and I actually have gratitude and thankfulness for the things that I went through, just because it led me to the relationship I now have with Jesus. And it's crazy because now, I went through those things at a younger age, that now I have the discernment in the relationship with Jesus Christ to know that those things aren't even worth my time, because, I want to live a life that's fulfilling and honoring to God. So.
Sam, tell me a little bit about how God found his way into your life.
Yeah, so when I had gotten to Trevecca, just wasn't a fan of the rules and everything. And truthfully, it was because I went with the wrong intentions. I wanted to play basketball, and Obviously, Nashville has that rep for Broadway, girls, just all of that. I just really went for the wrong intentions. And when God placed those teammates in my life, they were just living so differently that it led me to ask myself, what are they doing that I'm not? And the answer, of course, was Jesus. And that was when God had really started to point me in the direction that I needed to go. Was because as I said in the beginning, I always had that grasp for Jesus and God, and I always knew there was God, but I just didn't know how to follow him. And when I saw how my teammates were living, there was just something that stood out to me above all the other things, and that was the peace and the gratitude and the outlook of life that they had. And that is really what pushed me to want to start going to Bible studies and wanting to start going to church, and just to start to follow down the line. And it finally got to this point where God had found me. And when he found me, I knew it immediately because he put something on my heart I never felt before.
So you found what you were grasping for. I'm curious about, how did you feel when you found out that it was a Christian college? What emotions did you feel?
Yeah. I was a little irritated because it was just, again, I wasn't there to learn about God. I thought that the way that I had already thought about God was how everybody thought about God when I was growing up, the kids around me and everything. So I was a little frustrated, and not being able to have girls in my dorm, things like that. It was not my favorite. So then it really just was, all I have here is basketball. That's all I got going for me here. And then again, as I started to compete and play with my basketball teammates and everything, I started to get close with them. And that started to just push me to discover what was different about their life.
Yeah. I'm sure that when you found that peace,
Mm-hmm.
it was real calming, and you really finally found what you were grasping for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely, just even before I even gave my life to Christ, just the process of giving my life to Christ was such a crazy and amazing experience, just because I kind of knew in the back of my head that this is what I had been looking for my entire life. And as I started to get closer and closer and closer to that, I started to have that void slowly being fulfilled. And that was probably the best thing, obviously up until the point I gave my life to Christ, that I really enjoyed, because it helps me to be there for others when they need that push, that extra push to pursue what Jesus has for them.
Yeah. Well, I know that you're here for me and all the other youth members of our community, and I'm going to thank you again for coming on my show. I really appreciate it. Stick around for segment 2 of this episode. Appreciate it.